we believe if you're going to do it, the audit should be worth it. The problem is, audits are hard. Yet we've issued over 20,000 reports to 2,000 clients worldwide.
Yes, specifically for privacy, specific controls on how personal data is collected, processed, protected.
Cybersecurity and compliance will no longer be a mystery.
Hey everyone, and welcome back into our cybersecurity mission. My name is Allie Krings, and today we're sitting down with Suzette Corley. Suzette, thanks so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
Suzette is a privacy auditor here at KirkpatrickPrice. We're going to have an awesome podcast with her coming up about data subject rights as well. But Suzette, another topic that we wanted to address is in ISO, but this time it's ISO 27701. And I'm so excited about this because we do a lot of talk about ISO 42001, ISO 27001, but ISO 27701, what is that?
Yeah, so essentially you have ISO 27701 is an international standard that extends the ISO 27701. It includes privacy management. So it helps organizations establish, implement, and maintain and continually improve a privacy information management system, or what we call a PIMS. It's designed to support compliance with privacy regs like GDPR, CCPA, and others.
So why is, if this now introduces privacy management, why isn't this just like a basic in all international standards? I mean, why wouldn't ISO 27001 just already have this? Why did we have to add another international standard?
Well, I think that it goes to show you that, we've had security for a long time. We've had all kinds of frameworks that have developed for security. And I think privacy, as we've mentioned in the past, privacy, we're kind of coming up the back end. So what what they've decided to do was let's come up with a standard that's going to help multinationals, one standard, if you will. So if you did a 27701, and then you also had the piece of the 27701 added to it, then you're going to have this really well-rounded framework that's going to cover your privacy program and all aspects of that, which the 27701 does, but very limited. It's very limited. So this kind of gives you a really great standard to follow that that everywhere internationally recognizes. It's something that your customer would like. By having that as well. And
so specifically though, this is for personally identifiable information, right? This is like specifically for PII?
yeah, specifically for privacy, specific controls on how personal data is collected, processed, protected. And like I said, it adds this privacy layer on your existing security foundation.
Interesting. So, by the way, everybody, I do want to remind you, Suzette, of course, is a privacy auditor here at KirkpatrickPrice. Almost everybody at our company has like 1,000,001 letters and numbers after their name and all their certifications. And Suzette, you've collected quite a few yourself, but one of your most recent certifications is in ISO 27701. So congratulations. You're also the only one in our company that pursued this. So I want to learn a little bit more about what does this certification mean for you and why did you want to pursue this?
Well, I think it's one of these things where I think as a whole, the organization, our organization, wants to be able to provide our clients with the full overview of a framework such as ISO. We're finding that ISO 27001 is being requested more and more and more. And it kind of made sense to explore the privacy one. And the more I looked at it, I don't have a GDPR cert.
Okay.
When I was looking at the GDPR cert, comparing it to the ISO 27001 cert, it made more sense. The audience would be broader and cover more areas internationally than GDPR would. So GDPR would just be so totally focused in on EU, whereas the ISO 27701, and it's a mouthful to say that because you want to say 2701, and that just opens up the international, cookie jar here. It's just and there's a lot of similarities between the ISO 27001 and GDPR, but it's definitely it was a really, really great cert to learn about and get.
I do want to hear about the similarities, but I also want everyone to know, and this is going to be very thick sarcasm. This is a super easy certification to get. It's like a 2-hour class on a Wednesday night, and you're able to walk out, right, Suzette? It was that simple?
No.
So tell us about like the process in it, because it's quite grueling to be able to achieve this certification.
Yeah, it's definitely. So this is my first ISO cert, and my cert came from the qualifying board of PECB, and I went through an entire week of online training, and then which had a lot of exercises along the way. It wasn't. I had actually somebody that was online with the Teams chat, and we went through everything. One of the things I found that really helped me was because I have a lot of experience with GDPR in my past, that helped me understand a lot of the concepts, which was great. And then through my auditing process and going out on audits with the InfoSec auditors, was able to pick up a lot of the technical side of it. So, but when it came to the actual cert, the training's only just part of it. Once your training's done, then you actually have the exam. Now, most of the ISO exams currently are multiple choice. However, this particular one is an essay.
Oh.
And it's 12 essay questions. And each essay question needs to be framed up a certain way, which I was coached by my trainer on how to approach each essay question in order for me to capture everything that needed to be captured to pass the exam in a way that I didn't leave anything out for them when they were reading the answers that I gave. And but there's a waiting game, and then so you take the exam. You have 4 hours for the exam. I took every bit of those 4 hours to answer 12 essay questions. I felt like I was in college again. And the anxiety that comes along with it was there rearing its ugly head. But when I was done, then the process of submitting to the board to actually get the accreditation and the credentialing, and in that was a separate process. So first of all, it can take up to 4 weeks to get results back from an essay test.
Wow.
Whereas the multiple choice ones, right away, pass or fail. So once you get it back, and I was fortunate, I think mine came back within a week and a half. Then you officially apply for the certification. So the certification application included a couple work references I had to submit, and the cert is as a senior lead auditor for ISO 27001. I had to submit audit hours, how many hours I've audited. I had to have work references. And when I questioned my work references after the fact, I was curious as to what they asked. They asked very detailed questions about my work ethic and about how I handle things from an audit perspective. And then that process would take could take up to 4 weeks, but I was able to find out within 2 weeks. Yeah, it's a process. And
Oh my
um,
gosh.
it's interesting because I think a lot of people think you just take an exam, which and now as a result, now I'm listed in their, like, as a preferred, senior lead auditor for the ISO 27001. And yeah, so it's a process, but
That's
I'm really happy I
amazing.
did it. And it's probably the hardest certification I've ever gone for. And yeah, as one that doesn't like exams and puts things off like that, it was a little trying, but I'm glad I did it.
Well, we're glad you did it too, because like you said a moment ago, there are some similarities between ISO 27001 and then ISO 27701. So will you walk us through what are those similarities and why does this feel like it's a natural fit when Kirkpatrick Price does so many or does assist so many companies with their ISO readiness and ISO certs?
Yeah, so the difference really is there's about a 60% overlap between the two frameworks. 35, 30%, 40% is very specific, privacy specific. The other is very much the same concept around the ISO 27701. You could do the 27701 by itself, but it really wouldn't make sense to do it by yourself. And what's kind of nice is that there are those overlapping controls. So when you go in and you do an ISO 27001 readiness, I'm going to get ready for my certification, and you add in the other, because there's that overlap, it makes it the transition, and to add that in there, the privacy piece of it makes it really nice for an organization, because then that's going to give them that extra piece that really makes them that well-rounded, to do that. Yeah.
So with that being said, like a company that's already going through the ISO 27001, as opposed to, waiting 10 years and being like, we should really grab that ISO 27701. Could they just do both at the same time? And it's, in the way you've kind of broken it down, it's only an additional 35% more work, right?
Essentially, but there's a lot of value to that, right? So
right.
There's a lot of value for adding it. For one, it helps them demonstrate accountability in handling PII, personal data. It also helps them align with global privacy laws like GDPR, reducing regulatory risk. It enhances trust with their customers, because their customers are going to be like, oh, you've considered this is good. We didn't think about this. I'm glad you did this. With their customers, their partners, and even regulators who challenge something, you can go back and point to that. In addition, it helps them streamline their privacy operations by integrating with their existing ISO 27001 systems.
Can you walk us through, because this is, geared toward privacy, personal data, can you maybe share with us organizations or types of organizations that this would be a great thing to add on? And maybe are there times where you wouldn't recommend getting this?
Okay, so Let's see. Some examples might be, let's say you have a financial services firm and they're expanding in the EU. So to demonstrate compliance and build trust with EU regulators and their customers, maybe they decide that they're going to extend their ISO 27001 cert with the 27701 because it would help them operationalize the GDPR requirements like data subject rights and lawful basis of processing. But it also shows due diligence in vendor management and cross-border transfers. That would be another example. Or even like healthcare technology provider handling sensitive PII, right? So let's say you have a healthcare tech startup and they process patient data for hospitals. While HIPAA governs US operations, if they adopt ISO 27701, they can create a unified privacy framework across those other jurisdictions and then prepare for an international expansion, which strengthens their internal controls around consent, data minimization, and breach response.
Do you need to implement ISO 27001 before implementing ISO 27701?
That's a good question. No, you don't, because if you were to do ISO 27701, because it's got overlapping controls with the ISO 27001, I don't know why I'm having trouble with that. That
Why couldn't they have just named it something easy? You know?
I don't know why. They're all numbers when it comes to ISO. Because there is the framework includes the foundational ISO 27701, it can stand alone on its own. However, most organizations would benefit by doing both. You know, but it can stand on its own.
You know, when we were talking about data subject rights, one of the things we were diving into is controllers and processors. Do these have specific roles when it comes to ISO 27701?
Yes, and they work similar in the same respect. And there are controls around honoring data subject requests that are part of the ISO 27701. So yes.
And then what about, you know, I know you mentioned GDPR or, you know, being able to show that you have this international, you know, standard framework. If you have ISO 27701, does that mean that you are GDPR compliant?
Let's keep in mind, so ISO 27701 is a voluntary standard.
Okay.
So whereas GDPR is a legal regulation. So there's going to be variations to the nature, the scope, the focus points, the applicability, and enforcement that is going to vary between the two. For example, like we just mentioned, that ISO 27701 is a voluntary standard, right? So when it comes to the ISO 27701, it's really speaking about their privacy management system, whereas GDPR is just talking about the data protection law. And the focus around ISO 27701 is really around the operationalizing controls, whereas GDPR is around the legal rights and the obligations of the organization. The applicability is different because ISO is global, whereas GDPR is only with EU member states. And then on an enforcement basis, you have, for GDPR, you have regulatory fines and penalties if you're not compliant. or you're found not compliant. Whereas ISO, it's the enforcement's through your certification and your audit. So it helps you, to boil it down, it helps you organizations operationalize GDPR, but it doesn't replace the legal compliance, if that makes sense.
That was a beautiful explanation. Yes, thank you. What else should we know about possibly pursuing the ISO 27701? What would you want everyone to know who's listening?
I think there are some areas that to think about when it makes sense to do it. Mm-hmm. So, first of all, if you already have an ISO 27701 cert and want to extend it to privacy, which we've been talking about this whole time together, it certainly makes sense to do it. If you process large volumes of PII, personal data or sensitive data, would be another reason to do it. Or you operate in regulated industries such as healthcare, financial, tech. And if you want to show that you have alignment with GDPR to clients and regulators, and if you're expanding to a global market with diverse privacy laws. So if you're expanding to, APAC region and EMEA, APAC, and Australia, New Zealand, ISO definitely pulls weight on that. And, it's really about, like, if you think about a fintech company expanding to Europe and then they adopt 27701 to align its privacy practices with GDPR, and it builds trust with their EU customers. So those would be the areas that I think, and I mean, there's many more, but those are what come to mind when I think about when it would make sense to do that.
How do you prepare for it?
So you can prepare for it by doing a readiness gap type of assessment. So, and we do this for a lot of our clients with ISO 27701. We help them get ready for their certification. And same kind of thing. We would, you're given a series of questions about your people, processes, and procedures, and that are based off of those controls for the ISO 27701. And then based on your answers, then, we're able to help you determine where there is deficiencies or some gaps or areas for improvement, and be able to provide recommendations and resources and even consulting opportunities if need be, to help you get to that point where you want to be ready for your cert.
This is awesome. Suzette, I so appreciate you breaking this down. Is there anything else that you wanted to add on?
I don't think so. I think it's definitely worth thinking about. When you think about more and more organizations are looking at AI. I mean, NIST has got an AI standard. There's all kinds of things that are popping up. I think it's just sort of a natural fit if you're doing the ISO 27001, and as a complement, and it just makes the organization have confidence that that they're doing the right thing when it comes to compliance.
Perfectly said. Yeah. Suzette, thank you so much for joining us on our Cybersecurity Mission podcast. For everybody who is listening, if you do have specific questions for Suzette, feel free to go to our page, KirkpatrickPrice.com/podcast. You can submit questions there. You can request other topics, or if we mentioned other topics in this podcast, like data subject rights, you can check that podcast out on our website. You can also see other interesting topics or suggest what we might cover in the future. But Suzette, I want to say thank you so much for your time. For our those of you who have not yet, please join our cybersecurity mission LinkedIn page. It's where we're all able to kind of touch base. You'll also get notifications about recent episodes and resources that are coming out and coming your way. So for now, I'm Allie Krings, and I look forward to seeing you guys again soon.
When you work with a KirkpatrickPrice cybersecurity auditor, you work with someone who's been in your shoes. Let's see what the next expert is ready to share to support you in your cybersecurity mission.
Hi, my name is Michael Wise. I am the Principal Cloud Security Architect for KirkpatrickPrice. Today I'm going to talk to you about configuration standards. With the proliferation of cloud resources and things like infrastructure as code and DevOps and DevSecOps practices, making sure that your resources are configured correctly with the best practices is critical. And one of the ways to do that is to use what are called CIS benchmarks. And what that is a resource that allows you to have a baseline for security best practices as seen in the industry and apply those to your resources. So you as an organization can ensure that you have a strong baseline and a strong understanding of the configurations that you have applied.
If you want to prepare for success with regulatory compliance, visit KirkpatrickPrice.com/podcast or the show notes to download today's episode resources. We're here to empower you to face your cybersecurity and compliance challenges. Are you ready to join a community of 10,000 people who are working together to elevate the standards for cybersecurity and compliance? It's free to sign up at KirkpatrickPrice.com/podcast or check the show notes and achieve greater levels of assurance today. Thanks for joining us on our cybersecurity mission.